Hello everybody and welcome to my list of my 10 least favorite movies of 2016. Now, before I get into this list, I totally understand that this is just my opinion. I realize that there's going to be some movies on here that I'm sure a few of you actually liked, and look, that is totally okay. I mean, just because I don't like a movie doesn't mean I expect everyone else to. I realize that my channel is just completely my opinion, and as much as I do try and give an informative viewpoint on things, I totally understand that our opinions aren't always going to be the same. So please don't hate me for not liking some of these movies. This is just my opinion, and I completely understand if some of these were your favorite movies or whatever, and that's totally cool. We're still friends. So that being said, let's get stuck into my list. Now, starting off is a couple of movies that, look, they weren't bad as such. They were just kind of forgettable. I mean, like, 2016 gave us some very average movies. There were a few movies that I rated like a 5, which to me is just very on the fence. But there were a couple of movies to me that were probably the most forgettable of those ones. So, starting off with look, The Legend of Tarzan. I mean, it was a movie that didn't need to be there. It was one of these movies that just, I don't know, it could have been a much more adventurous action sort of film, but I was realistically sitting there kind of bored through the whole thing, and I don't even really remember that much of it. So that one has made my list. Like I said, it wasn't a horrible movie. It just was very bland. The BFG was also a similar movie to Tarzan, where, look, you know, it was okay, but once again, I hardly remember much of it, and it should have been really impressive with its use of CG characters, that kind of stuff, but I don't know, it just felt really boring, and I don't think the story was all that engrossing, and yeah, there were a few yawns throughout that flick. Okay, now this one was also very mediocre, but I'm putting this lower on the list because it should have been great. I mean, let's face it, the original Bourne trilogy, not counting number 4, but the original Bourne trilogy, they almost redefined the modern day action genre in a way. And, you know, this movie should have absolutely kicked ass, but oh wow, I was so bored throughout the whole runtime. I don't know what went wrong, but this was just a by-the-numbers action movie that had nothing interesting in it at all, and I really hope I never have to see it again. This one was also another movie I was really looking forward to seeing. I mean, I loved The Office, I love Ricky Gervais, I love his character David Brent, and I remember seeing the trailer for this for the first time, and I was so excited to see it, and couldn't wait to see it, went along, and wow, I was really let down. This movie just wasn't funny, and I realized at the time when I was watching it that if you've got the character of David Brent in his own movie, he's not that funny. It was actually, he's only funny when he's got all the other characters in The Office to bounce off, and yeah, so I was extremely disappointed with David Brent Life on the Road. Wow. This movie was really lame, man. I know I'm not the only person who has that opinion, but man, look, I wasn't even that interested in seeing it, but I went along solely for the purpose of reviewing it, and oh man, you know, it should have been great. I mean, a movie about a virus that can wipe out half of humanity and all that sort of stuff. I love virus movies, I really do. Outbreak, I mean, God, that was such a great flick, but oh wow, this was just so boring, and yeah, don't see Inferno. Don't. Well, this was a story that needed a sequel, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. I did not like this movie. I didn't laugh in it. I was a fan of the first one. I didn't mind the first one, but this second one was just such a pointless sequel. It offered nothing to further the story. Like I said, who needed it to be furthered anyway? It was full of lazy performances, bad writing, and I just really didn't like the movie at all. Now, this is definitely a movie that I'm sure a few people are going to be like, how could you hate Sausage Party? It was so funny, because I really feel like I'm in a minority on this one, but I just couldn't get into this movie. It was another case of a trailer that really excited me, and I couldn't wait to see it. But my God, it was just full of profanity for the sake of profanity. Like I said in my review, I like profanity when it's clever, but this time around, it just wasn't. It was just, oh man, I really couldn't get into this movie at all. And I was really disappointed because I wanted to love it so much. It looked like my kind of movie, but yeah, in the end, I really didn't like it. Independence Day was one of the biggest movies of the 90s. I mean, holy crap. It was the definition of a blockbuster. It was one of the biggest movies ever, and okay, so, 20 years has gone by, and the sequel comes out, and it's like, well, okay, this could go either way. Unfortunately, it went the way that I didn't want it to go, and this movie just sucked. I mean, oh man, it had none of the charm or personality that the original had, which I know it was a cheesy disaster movie, but it was still fun. This movie wasn't fun at all. Oh man, it was painful to sit through. It went way too long. It just didn't have any of the interesting characters of the first one. And those that were reused were just utterly pointless, and I absolutely hated Independence Day Resurgence, and I wish I lived in a world where that movie didn't exist. So this is a movie that didn't actually make it to theaters, and I can see why. Oh my God, it was so utterly useless. I mean, whether or not you liked the original Cabin Fever, you gotta admit, a remake was not warranted, and this one, oh my God, it was so agonizing. Everything from the really bad performances, horrible script, to things that just didn't make any sense whatsoever. It was such a festering sore on the face of horror cinema, and I hate you, Cabin Fever remake. And speaking of festering sores on horror cinema, here we go with my number one most hated movie of 2016. As you're most likely aware if you've been following my channel, I love The Blair Witch Project, the original one from 1999. It is one of my most favorite horror movies ever made. And when this movie called The Woods was being marketed, I was kind of thinking to myself, oh yeah, it looks a little Blair Witchy, but whatever. Only for the makers of the film to do a complete turnaround and say, haha, surprise everybody, it's a movie called Blair Witch. And I was so excited that I even did a video on my channel about how excited I was to see this new Blair Witch movie, and oh wow, I was thinking to myself, this was hopefully going to be the movie that us Blair Witch fans have been yearning for so long. And the initial reviews were just through the stratosphere. They were such great reviews, and I got really excited for this flick. So I went and saw it, and oh boy. I've always maintained that if there's ever a movie that I cannot sit through, I'm looking at you, 50 Shades of Grey, then it deserves a 0, because if a movie doesn't have anything worth getting you through, then I'm sorry, it deserves a 0. And this movie, I honestly could have walked out about 2/3 of the way through, and after enduring the last part, I honestly believe I wouldn't have missed anything, to be honest. It was such a pile of crap, and I only gave it a 0.5 out of 10 because of that clever marketing campaign, but Look, and this is another movie. I realize there are a lot of people who dug it, and that is totally cool. I wish I was one of you. I really wish I could have enjoyed this movie. But in my opinion, it was just a badly rehashed version of the first one with characters I couldn't get behind. I didn't like any of them. There were too many characters. There were too many edits in the film. And just things happened that, I don't know, made you kind of scratch your head, like how a drone battery can last that long being stuck up in a tree, because I have a drone and I know those batteries only last about 10 minutes, so look, this movie was just full of things I didn't like, and that was without a doubt my worst movie of 2016. So there you have it. Those are my least favorite movies of 2016. I would love to know what yours are, because I know that there were a lot of people who had very mixed opinions about a lot of things. I keep reading lists and, watching videos and that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm interested to know what yours are. So drop me some comments either here or on Facebook. All my social media links are down in the description below, because I like to talk about movies and I would love to talk about movies with you. I'll see you next time.
Click subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest movie reviews. Skynet will be taking over any day now, so what have you got to lose? Nyah.